Welcome everybody to the show about post-apocalyptic survival. I'm your host, Get Ready Bill, and today we're talking about a real-life story about a man who survived the apocalypse. He finds a postman's uniform and he puts it on and he wanders to a settlement. And Tom Petty is the mayor. And he works his way in there, faking as a postman, and he delivers mail, and he brings joy and closure to many families.
Well, hang on a second. Hang on a second, everybody. Before I welcome you to the podcast, I have questions.
Yes.
In the post-apocalyptic world,
the postman uniform was the same size that he wore, so he really sold it. Wasn't a small guy. It was his exact same size clothes, so everybody bought it.
And how's Tom Petty still alive post-apocalyptic? Like, he's still Tom Petty. That doesn't say a mayor played by Tom Petty. The mayor was Tom Petty.
He was. That was the plot to The Postman. Kevin Costner is a real movie, and Tom Petty was playing himself as a surviving mayor, dude.
But he's Tom Petty.
Yeah, it was awesome, man.
Oh my
I love that.
Welcome
movie.
Everybody to another episode of the Evil Safety Dudes. We are your hosts, Aaron Iacino, and I'm AJ Hanscom. I would like to introduce my co-host, Aaron Iacino. He is an OSHA-authorized outreach instructor in the general industry and construction.
And I, AJ Ditto, except his name is not Aaron Iacino, it's AJ Hanscom. But he is also an OSHA-authorized outreach instructor for the general industry and the construction industry, which would go perfect today for our topic because...
What are we doing today? I just want to talk about some apocalyptic postmen.
Yeah, I love those movies, but today we're going to talk about civilization as we know it, and there's these machines that we operate called boom lifts, scissor lifts, and MIPS. And we're going to talk about that today, guys. But, the whole show is about how not to die at work, from everything from not getting sucked into a machine to not getting stabbed or shot by an active killer. So we cover it all. Workplace safety are us.
Machines just be sucking people up at work.
They do.
Walking around.
They do.
Right into the machine.
All the time.
Every day.
Yep. Probably
on the daily. Well, Aaron, it's been a minute. We're always recording. We're in a hurry. We're on the run. How have you been the last week? I haven't seen you.
I've been happy because it's spring and I don't wear coats and I barely wear jackets.
Oh, it's so nice leaving in the morning without a coat.
I'm not wearing my big heavy boots. I got my steel-toe tennis shoes on. I love when I get to wear that, but I don't wear them when there's snow.
Well, I mean, you don't want to get that wet foot.
So I'm just happy about the weather change. How about you? What's new with you?
I'm honestly in about the same boat. Weather change is good. We've been doing gardening, ripping up the front of the yard, laying down some fresh rock, making the house look pretty again, getting ready for everything to grow back. I'm ready to not have brown everything.
Right.
Like dead trees, dead bushes. I'm excited to have everything turn green again. Very excited. I'm pumped.
Well, that's cool, man. So this show, we got some confusing terminology because
it can be.
We teach these operator certifications all the time. We teach people how to operate scissor lifts, how to operate boom lifts. But, some people know them by the names, but I hear people calling a boom lift a JLG.
Ooh, or how about snorkel?
A snorkel lift.
How about that snorkel?
I've heard them call them an articulating lift.
Ooh, that person's fancy. They drink their tea with their pinky up.
And I've heard them called knuckle booms.
I hear that one.
Knuckle boom. A lot of different terminology. So before we get started, give us your best shot. What is a scissor lift?
Well, you see, that's when you hold a pair of scissors underneath someone's shoes and open them. And then they are
Do you ask them to lift their foot up first? Because how do you get the scissors under them?
They have to balance on the scissors.
Okay.
And then I open them.
All right.
We use their weight. We put something difficult to
cut. This
cut.
sounds dangerous.
We put something difficult to cut.
Sounds like someone's foot's going to get stabbed.
Yeah.
How about the ones that are operated on construction sites and in industrial plants?
Now, your scissor lifts, of course, they're just your up and down. But what I think is pretty interesting and what's getting crazy now is all of the weird little tiny one-person scissor lifts that just have a single piston drive. And somebody be looking at that and they're like, well, there's nothing in it that makes me think of scissor lift now. Is that a boom lift?
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at it
or
like, oh, man, is this boom lift? Is this scissor lift? What is this thing now?
So, but the actual scissors lift, it gets its name from the lifting mechanism. I mean, not the hydraulic cylinder, but the metal supports that cause it to go up and down. And I honestly don't think a scissor lift is a good name.
I mean, it's not a great name.
I mean, they're like X's.
Right.
It's like accordion lift. It should be called an accordion lift.
See, I think that would make sense to people if they saw that. Because then if we replace the scissoring attachments with instead, like a more accordion-style cylinder, if we always called that an accordion lift, there'd be less confusion.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to stick, though.
No.
But so scissor lifts, yeah, they just go up and down. They got that diving board is what I call it, but it's a extendable platform that extends out.
The diving board?
Yeah, I call it the diving board. Or the plank. Walk the plank. Arr. And usually they're electronic controlled, and they got hydraulic lifting equipment, and one side's full of batteries, the other side's full of hydraulics. And AJ, where do you see these? Just in construction?
I see them everywhere.
Everywhere.
Inside buildings, outside buildings, on top of buildings.
Yeah.
You will find scissor and boom lifts everywhere.
Yeah, and scissor lifts are cool because they got the upper controls and the lower controls, but they got that emergency release.
Which is so much handier than how you have to emergency release a boom lift. I
don't think there is emergency release on boom lifts.
So there's a way, and I only know this because we might as well just dive into the stories. We had working out remember that huge, big job we had for a while up in North Sioux? The very large facility getting constructed?
Yeah.
Well, in one of the big areas in there was a boom lift being operated that we had to red flag because if they did their proper per-use inspection, they would have realized, it will always go up, but it will never come down.
That's weird.
The controls, no matter what, ground controls or basket controls, it wouldn't go down.
It's a control issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then people would get in it, they'd take the red tag off, they would just hop in it, go 40, 50 foot up into the ceiling, and then they would try to come down and be stuck. And site safety wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. Every now and then we were catching people climbing out of it, literally climbing 40, 50 foot down that
That's crazy.
Yeah, sliding down it, trying to hang on,
That's
come down.
nuts. I could do it, though. I could totally climb down a scissor lift.
I had several people that really did do it.
It's wobbly, though.
Oh, it was terrible. And there's not anything good. If you started sliding one way or the other.
Imagine if it came down while you were climbing down.
Oh, man, that would be scary.
You'd almost have to jump.
Yeah.
Because you would get smashed.
You got to clear it.
In the scissors.
In the scissors.
In the accordion.
So they would start climbing down this boom lift, and it was extended way out. They'd be working up in the ceiling, and then when the rental company would show up, there's actually a way that they can go into the hydraulic system. They pop that side door open, they go and shut everything down, and then they can manually release those lines, and then they can, if there's somebody trapped, the basket arm would just lower to the ground.
And you're talking about in a boom lift?
In a boom lift.
Huh.
Yeah, so like literally the arm, nothing would articulate and come back, but it would just, all the pressure would release, and that whole thing would just come down.
Crazy.
Yeah, so there's ways to do it.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you can just cut the hydraulic lines, too.
That'd be a ride.
I mean, it is possible.
Hey, guys, I'm your safety guy here to rescue you today. Okay, great, safety guy. Now hold on tight. Wait, I thought you said
I'll
a safety
get you
guy.
down. No, see.
That's not a safe ride.
It's illegal, but you could have them tie off to the rafters and the ceilings. Then when you cut the lines, they'll stay hanging.
But then how do we get them? The point was to get them down. That was the point.
Okay, so that's a bad idea then. All right. So, yeah, the emergency release on the scissor lifts is cool.
Super handy. However, as a point of note, have you run into both? I'm sure you have. If you've been at this longer than I have. There's two different types of releases for the scissor lift.
I've seen two different types. The main one is the red T-bar.
Yeah, it's easy. Like Genies have just the one pole.
But I have seen ones that operate just like hydraulic car jacks.
Oh, okay. That's not what I was talking about.
Okay, what were you talking about?
So and what I keep running into is, and what depends on usually who the manufacturer is, but if you, on some JLGs, it's a 3-point process. If you find that red bar and you grab it and pull it, the lift will not come down.
Okay.
Like there's this little sticker that says you got to go find the main lockout tagout point and click it off.
Okay.
And then there's this little red plunger on the cylinder. You got to turn that, and that's hidden in the scissors. So you got to go to that, turn that, and then you can find the red plunger, pull that thing out, and then it will lower.
Okay. All right.
It can be kind of
I've seen
trip.
one where there was an attachment for this really long rod, and you pop that off, and just like a car jack, you stick that rod on and you turn it, and then you take it off and you put it on this other apparatus, and then you slowly turn it, and then starts coming down. If you think about it, they are a glorified car jack.
I mean, yeah. It's just
instead of manually pumping that bar, it's electronic.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much a jack.
You know, in the boom lift standard, it says that boom lifts can be metal, wood, or fiberglass, and can also be powered or manually operated. So I've always wanted to see a wooden, manually operated
That'd
boom
be awesome.
lift.
We should buy one.
You know,
Or
so
make
like
one.
you're
Retro scissor.
like operating pedals and like pressurizing stuff by hand and
The
cranking
new guy.
levers.
That's the new guy's job, right? He has to pedal a bike to lift up the people.
They're like cranking gears and pulleys to turn it and articulate it.
There
like
you
instead
go.
of having buttons to press, you're literally
They probably had that stuff back in the day.
I mean, I don't know, but
We just got fancy.
it's written in the standard, so
There's a lot of old
it
stuff in
had
the
to have
standard.
existed, right?
I always like when we get some brand new curriculum and it's like, you could use VHS or cassette tapes.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, this is supposed to be new stuff here, man.
Please hook this up to your TV's inline component audio video. And you're like, excuse me? That hasn't been standard in the television since early 2000.
So I think we gave him a pretty decent picture, hopefully, of a scissor lift. Now let's talk about a boom lift. Do your best to describe a boom lift.
So the boom lift, your typical drivable, but not a tow, like a regular, the whole boom lift. It's got kind of a chassis set where the chassis end where it's got the 4 wheels, it's got like a big butt, and then it's got a main connecting arm that comes off where a basket sits. So you've just got like a big butt.
How
with
is
an
it
arm
different
and a
than a
basket.
scissor lift?
Well, this thing can go not only up and down, sometimes they telescope out, and then that main arm can also elevate and pivot itself. So there's that articulation that they add into it.
Right.
So it doesn't just do up down. It can do up and down and left and right and back and forth and in and out.
And that chassis, on top of it, it's sitting on a turret.
Yeah, so she can rotate
It
almost all the way
rotate
around.
besides up, down, extend out, tilt. Yeah, so I've seen up to 3 different booms. Primary, secondary, tertiary booms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool. You can go up, telescope out, and then you have another jib boom that you could twist, go up and down. So yeah, a ton of articulation. You could fit that little bad boy into a lot of different angles. Why would someone use a boom lift instead of a scissor lift?
Well, I mean, you can reach over stuff, and you can also
Right.
reach over and then under stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
A scissor, you're very confined to just up down.
Have you seen the guys on the truck-mounted booms
Oh yeah.
pull up on a bridge?
Oh yeah, and then
And they go out and down and under
and
the
then
bridge.
under
I
and
saw
then
that
back
the other
up.
day. I was like, that's a special boom lift.
That's pretty
It's a
cool.
truck-mounted boom lift, but it's a boom lift.
It's very cool.
It just, I could just imagine pulling the truck over the bridge, though. You know, if they
Start jumping up and down on it.
if they overloaded that thing. But I've done a lot of training on truck-mounted boom lifts for like different municipalities, and they will not work unless you have the outriggers down.
Good. Well, I mean, you would
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah.
That's actually in the boom standard, I suppose.
Yeah,
If it has outriggers,
and
they
wheel
must be
chocks.
deployed.
And you know, I always feel weird teaching that because when we're teaching the regular ones, you don't have to chock those wheels
Right.
to operate.
But this one, you gotta.
All right, so I think our folks out there got a good idea what boom lifts and scissor lifts are. Let's go with some case studies. Why don't you go first? A real life OSHA bust somebody or somebody died or something from a boom or scissor lift.
Well, do I want to do the serious one that makes people go, or do I want to do the kind of funny one?
Sure, start off crazy.
With the serious one. The serious one was rough, man. That was a bad story. I had a couple of guys working in a scissor lift way up
Couple
high.
of guys that were up to no good.
Well, they were up to good. I mean,
Okay,
they were.
all right. You just started Fresh Printing lyrics on me, and I just
Had
it's
a couple of
automatic
guys.
response.
They were up to some good. They were installing plumbing in your neighborhood, but they were working clear up in the ceiling, and I think they were doing some plumbing or pipe fitting, and they were clear up high, and they were working in a plant, and inside of that plant, there's a huge overhead gantry crane. So it's a big track-mounted crane.
This sounds like a bad story.
that rolls. It's a bad story. That rolls on I-beams.
I remember this story now.
Yeah, and they were way up there, and the particulars got kind of scary. So the guys were like, hey, if we're going to be working inside this crane, because that's where they were inside where the crane could go.
Not inside the crane,
Not
but
inside, the crane,
travel
but
path.
Yeah,
Okay,
where the
I gotcha.
I-beams, like the little wheels, so
Right.
the crane could literally run into them. They were like, while we're in there, we want this lock and tagged out because we're inside of a
They
machine.
wanted the crane locked out so it didn't smoke them.
Yep. And they were assured by plant management. The guy was like, no, you're working in here Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. I'm working in here those nights, and you're going to be safe because I'm the one man in the crane. No, we're not going to do it.
I heard it different. I heard the guy said, "Don't worry, we never use that crane."
Well, this is the one I got.
Okay,
told.
okay, keep going.
And maybe that was true. Maybe it was like, don't worry, we never used the crane. But yeah, he was saying, no matter what, I'm in here. I'm the one up here. You got nothing to worry about. And they were assured. And they hemmed and hawed, didn't want to do it. We're gonna do it. Didn't want to do it. Finally broke down. Took the job.
They got peer pressured. Yeah. Dun dun dun.
Well, and who knows? We weren't there. I mean, it could have been a lot of things. They could have threatened to pull the job and say, well, fine, we'll go hire Joe Schmo. Or maybe they were just, like, whatever, we trust you. So who knows? I wasn't there. But what ended up happening is the person who was operating the crane ended up leaving their shift Sunday, and then later that night somebody else came in to take over, and they ended up operating the crane directly into these guys because they weren't aware that they were there. And it didn't go well.
Did they knock down the scissor lift?
So there was 2 guys in the scissor lift, and they were both tied off. And the one
to the scissor lift.
Okay. And the one, neither one heard the crane coming, and then it jostled the side of the scissor lift and started crushing it.
Wow.
And so the one who was standing,
it's amazing it didn't knock it over.
He tried, because it was actually getting pushed. It was up in between the I-beams and the structural steel.
Oh, wow.
So it was literally up in the angle iron up there, and the one guy grabbed into the angle and started to climb out.
Yeah.
And the scissor lift and the crane was actually going quickly enough that it crushed him and caught him during his escape. And he got some really severe injuries. He had some broken ribs.
Punctured lung?
Punctured his lungs in multiple places. I think it broke one of his hips, or like it fractured his hip. It broke his leg.
He was messed up.
It was bad. And the other guy, I think, I might be mixing up 2 scissor lift stories. So if somebody knows this person, you have to forgive me if I am. But what I remember is that his lanyard got cut, and he fell from the scissor lift and actually incurred a severe back injury.
Wow.
Yep.
Craziness.
Ugh. So, I mean,
that's a bad one. I've worked...
trust in people.
Yeah, they should have locked it out. I mean, if OSHA was there, saw them in the path of that crane, they would have got a lockout tagout violation. But I'm sure they may have. I don't actually remember OSHA being involved in that case.
I don't think they did, which I thought was surprising.
Yeah. So I was working a case where a guy was in a boom lift, and he was in a meat packing plant, and they have these these drains slope down into the floor, so there's a dip. And the guy made a mistake of traveling while it was up in the air. Ooh. So he couldn't really see the floor that well. So when he was driving and his front tire went down into that dip where that drain was, it shifted the boom, and it crushed him in structural steel.
Oh, no. So he was all the way at the top, like as high as he could go.
Well, I don't know. It was a boom lift, so, those go up pretty high. But, yeah, he was up in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't travel like that. You should retract it. Now, if you got to make a micro adjustment, that's one thing. But
what's a micro adjustment?
If I got to move a couple feet,
it's super small.
Yeah. You're not traveling. You're not cruising like that because they're top heavy, and you can't see the ground very well. So anyway, it killed him. He died.
Oh,
and it was actually a happy ending because some other contractor was in that structural steel, illegally untied himself from the steel, risking his own life, monkeyed through the steel like Tarzan, jumped in the basket, took control of the boom lift, lowered it. That plant had nurses. They had AEDs as well. They brought him out, shocked the dude, brought him back to life, full on resurrected.
Dang.
Easter story.
That's hardcore.
Yeah. And
so saved his life.
So he died, but he lived.
Right.
It was a fatality, technically. They had to report it within 8 hours of OSHA.
Ooh.
Even though he came back to life. He did dead.
He did die.
He did dead. He did dead, man.
Dude, for sure. He did dead.
So that was scary.
You done dead? I did dead before.
Man, I could tell the scissor lift stories all day long. Let's do...
I had a really short, stupid
All right,
one.
go for it.
Oh, God. It was so stupid. But one of my contractors, I work with a lot. They had been moving a scissor lift. They weren't at elevation. They weren't using it for work. They were literally just moving it from one area to another.
They were in it, though, driving it?
In it and driving it.
Okay.
Wearing his hard hat because scaffolding. He's on a job site. He secured the top chain of the scissor lift, but didn't secure the middle chain of the scissor lift.
There was 2 chains in the scissor lift?
2 chains on this old scissor lift.
That was weird.
And the middle chain was not secured on the scissor lift, and they received an OSHA citation for not having fall protection.
So I worked a case like that. There was a guy who was maxed out in the scissor lift. He's about 19 feet in the air, no harness. And he did not just secure, most scissor lifts don't have 2 chains, Most of them got a bar on the top, and then the mid rail is the chain. He did not clasp that. He did not close that chain off. So he's at a county building working. He sees the state car rolls up. He just figures, state, county, they'll probably hang out together and have coffee. I don't know. He didn't think OSHA. Well, it was OSHA. Oh, geez. OSHA looks right up, 19 feet, and this guy's in the air, no mid-rail, because that chain is not closed. And so he gets him for failure to have fall protection because he's up over 6 feet with not a full guardrail system because of that chain.
So he closed the gate, but didn't get the chain. Swung that top bar.
There was no gate. The top bars usually don't move. There's usually a gate,
right?
Or a single chain. That's the standard. 99% of all of them are like that, gate or one chain. So he had a top rail that is fixed there. You have to unbolt stuff to take that off. But so he had a top rail for fall protection, but not that mid rail because he didn't close the chain. So they got busted pretty good.
That's rough.
Yeah. Let's do one more. So this guy, this is in Iowa at a plant, contractor. And there's another contractor scissor lift on site, and he needs it. He does not do a pre-use inspection. Had he would have found out that the dead man switch is broken. For those of you guys that don't know, there's these joysticks in the scissor lifts, and there's a trigger on them, and that's your dead man switch, just like in the movies with the bombs. If I release this, we will all blow up, so you can't shoot me. You guys seen those movies?
I mean,
that's how scissor lift joysticks are.
It's kind of the opposite. It's for safety instead of destruction.
Yeah. So you have to purposefully squeeze the trigger on the joysticks for the controls to work, and it'll go up and down or forward or back or whatever you're doing. So this one was broken, and he did not do his previous inspection, so he did not find that out. So he hops in there. He gets up to his working height. He starts working. He also makes another mistake. He does not hit the E-stop. So while he's working, he accidentally presses that joystick and makes the machine go up. And then there was a HVAC drip pan, and it crushed him between the HVAC drip pan and the top rail.
Oof.
He survived. He broke his C2 vertebrae.
Ouch.
Yeah,
right
OSHA came in and slammed him. I worked one other case like that in Texas where the guy died. And it wasn't on HVAC drip pan, though, but it was on a 1-inch production line. A 1-inch pipe and the top rail killed the guy.
Like just broke his neck or just pinched his neck like right between the guardrail or something?
Crushed him, killed him. And, you think it would bend or break, but, So, when we teach this course, we teach the statistics, and it's like tip overs is the number one cause of fatalities in the U.S., and there's an average of 8 a year or something. I forget what it says.
Yeah, the scissor lift one is 8 a year.
But in my experience, I've never worked a tip over on a scissor lift or a boom lift.
We almost had one. Thankfully, it didn't go. I had a couple guys had a scissor lift overloaded.
Nice.
They were doing the 1, 2, 3 jump.
To get it up because it was so heavy it wouldn't go up?
Yep. They didn't get it too far before they said that it just kind of started to tilt and tip on one side, and everybody started to fall that way. And then they started to go that way, and they thought it was going to go, but the guy in the front grabbed the joystick, and he pulled down, and it came down.
Terrible. Instead
of tipping over.
When those things go, it doesn't matter you're tied off.
No, you're hitting the ground.
You're slamming into it. That's bad. There was that national tip-over death on a scissor lift. It was at a major college.
I don't know if I know that story.
Made national news.
Was it recent? Maybe I can find it.
No, it's a few years ago. It was Notre Dame. And this kid was an audiovisual student.
Oh, no.
And in most high schools and in colleges, they film the football games by putting a scissor lift on the field behind the goalpost. And they film the games that way. Even in our town, Sioux City, you can go to some of these football fields for high school and college and see a scissor lift sitting out there.
Okay, I did. I pulled it up.
So this is a kid, right? He's not certified.
He's 20, yeah.
He was 20?
Yeah.
So he's not certified. He's up there in the air, some audiovisual student, filming a practice game and high winds on grass.
Oh, no.
And it blew him down and it killed him. So now what I've seen since that death, I've seen him put a sheet of plywood under the scissor lift.
Wow, this is dark too.
What else you got? You got something worse?
Oh, no, it's just that same thing. Right before he went up, he complained to the school staff because the weather that day was saying there was 60-mile-an-hour gusts.
No.
And so then he tweeted on his Twitter.
Nuh-uh.
He put, gusts of up to 60 miles an hour today will be fun at work. I guess I've lived long enough.
That's crazy.
And then he got in the scissor lift and it killed him.
Yeah, that's peer pressure, man.
Wow.
You shouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, he knew it was wrong and he did it anyway. It's terrible.
So on that unstable ground, they're using plywood to try to give it
Like
more
a
of
mud
like
seal.
a base.
And, you know, I think
solid
that's
base.
good. But you know, and I know because we teach this and we point this out to our students, but let's put you on the spot because I like doing that. Ask AJ section of the show.
That's right.
Brought to you in part by something.
Waffles, 'cause I like them.
No, if it's sponsoring AJ, it's Hormel Chili. Proudly presents Ask AJ.
If it's any brand of chili, I'm happy.
All right, here's the question. What's the average mile per hour on warning sticker on the scissor lifts and a lot of the boom lifts that you are not allowed to operate if it's at that or above?
Okay, I got 2 answers.
Okay.
For the little ones, I would say the average is like right around 20. Like, it's not very much. And then for those medium and bigger ones, the number I see the most is 25.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I always see 28.
28?
Yeah.
Oh, I keep seeing 25.
That's fine because it could be. I don't do the tests. But when I'm teaching them, I always see 28 on booms and scissors. So that guy was in 60.
60-mile-an-hour gust.
That's
that day.
3 times over the limits. So I don't know if OSHA got involved. They should have because it's fatality. But it technically was an employee, though. So I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
But if he was an employee, OSHA had jurisdiction, they would have probably got him on no training.
Oh, yeah.
And then operating against the manufacturer's recommendations, probably maybe they would have got him on some kind of
I'm sure that
General Duty Act.
if you look into that case, I'm sure the family probably did something about it. Because I mean, if the kid was already complaining, saying, "Why do I have to do this?"
Yeah,
and
hopefully
then he
they
makes
didn't
it
say,
public.
"Do it anyway, wuss."
Yeah, well, probably what they did. They're probably like, "Whatever."
I don't know.
We film these in bad
It's
weather
not a
all
construction company; it's a college. They're all sensitive.
the time. I don't know, man. Well, it was 2011, so
Yeah, back in the 11s.
back in the 11s.
All right, so we got a lot of
teens.
case studies. We can go on and on, but let's talk about updates. So, forever, OSHA actually had aerial lift regs, which only covered the boom lifts.
Right.
And much to my chagrin,
A chagrin.
I don't know if
Your
I used that
chagrinery?
word correctly, but
don't know.
I was always disappointed that they did not have an actual scissor lift standard or regulations. And it always, when I was feeling mean and ornery to my students in an OSHA 30, I always make them look up stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
And or if I was just tired and needed extra time to drink coffee or something, I
extra
needed
sleepy.
a break. This is what I would do. I'd say, all right, students, now what I'd like you to do is look up the scissor lift regulations in the OSHA 1910 or 1926 books and tell me, I don't know, their fall protection rules for scissor lifts. And they'd all have books. I say you could use your phones too or tablets. And then I would get a nice long break.
There you go.
And
Takes them a minute. If
and
they're using the internet, they could find it.
AJ knows why I'm getting a long break because there is no regs. It's a wild goose chase.
Yeah. It's kind of like at Little Caesars, we would always say, go find something from the basement.
There you go.
There was no basement.
There's no basement. So anyway, they regulate scissor lifts in construction under mobile scaffolding.
No mobile scaffolds. So the same regs written in the 1970s are mostly what is being used to enforce scissor lift rules today.
Half those rules don't even apply.
I mean, one of my favorites, and this is just kind of an oddball, just completely thrown out there, but is the one that just says, scissor lift cannot be moved with people on the platform unless specifically designed for it.
Which they all are today.
Right.
So
like,
again,
you read that and you're like,
it's kind of useless.
okay.
Yeah. Not super applicable.
But they say it a lot.
So OSHA does rely heavily on ANSI. OSHA, highly regards ANSI's opinion.
The American National Standardized Institute.
Thank you for describing the acronym.
That's right.
And every now and then they'll actually incorporate the ANSI rules into the OSHA law.
That's true.
It's called incorporator by reference.
They'll say,
They do
this
that-
is because of this ANSI rule.
Yeah. And so ANSI had come out with some new aerial lift rules. And has OSHA adopted them yet or incorporated them yet?
So far, no.
Okay. But they're worth talking about because ANSI is still cool. They're smart safety people. Yeah. And I got clients that are actually kind of freaking out about it.
They think it like when this drops, if it becomes
well, no,
law,
they think
like
it's dropped. They're like, oh, we got to have new training according to the MIPS.
The MIPS?
We got to get on board with MIPS.
Mobile Elevated Work Platforms.
And that's how I actually heard about the new ANSI reg. I don't stay up on ANSI like I do with OSHA.
Right.
OSHA, I know when they're thinking about changing a rule 10 years before they change it.
That's because it takes them 10 years.
And they tell you, too. They're like, we have a proposed rule. We think we're going to do this. What do you think?
Well, it's one of the nice things. They actually ask for feedback so that people have a chance
to. They're required to because it's a law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice law.
So ANSI, I had a customer like, oh, no, the new MIPS. And I'm thinking, like, what is this guy talking about? A MIP. A MIP.
It's a MEWP.
MEWP, and he was talking about ANSI. So let's talk about that a little bit. So ANSI is trying to change everything. They don't want scissor lifts, boom lifts. They don't want manufacturer names. They want to call them all MIPs. AJ, do you know what MIP stands for?
Mobile Elevated Work Platforms.
Very good. MEWP, MIPs. That's going to be fun to say in a class 100 times.
I'm going to just call them a MOOPs. MOOPs.
You're going MOOPs?
Yep.
It's more like a MEWP. A meep.
No, you may not be. You may not.
So let's talk about this. So came out in 2018. It's a new best practice. That's an important word. We're set to take effect on December 10th of 19. And then it looks like it got pushed. The new effective date was June 1st, 2020. And this is ANSI. We're not talking about OSHA, by the way. Mm-hmm. And this covers both scissor lifts and boom lifts. And they started changing the types and terminology and classifications. So they got a type 1 MIP is something that can only travel with the platform in a stowed position. What would that be?
I would say that's like a tower truck.
Okay, truck-mounted boom lift?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, like, the only way the truck can drive, because those things will disable the truck. You can't drive them.
You do have to change over the PTO to run them.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So you can't.
All right.
Yeah.
So I could get behind that. Or do you think a spider lift would be that?
Yeah. So, yeah, there you go. I think those would volunteer.
I mean, those technically don't drive. They're towed, but you don't.
But it can't travel unless it's stowed. Yeah.
All right, so maybe that's a type 1 now.
Okay.
So rare for me. I can play with a spider lift every now and then, truck mounted boom lift every now and then. Electricians, they use them a ton.
Certainly not as much as everything
City
else.
uses them a ton, but yeah, definitely. All right, type 2, MIP, can travel elevated and is controlled from the chassis.
So those would be scissors and booms. Can travel elevated.
But what does controlled from the chassis mean? Because on a scissor and boom, you're controlling it
from the basket.
Yeah.
But does it say is controlled from or can be controlled?
Is controlled from the chassis. Let me read number 3. Maybe it'll give us some clarification. Type 3 MIP can travel elevated and is controlled from the platform.
Okay, so now we're back over into there.
So maybe a type 3 is what we're used to, and I don't know what a type 2 would be.
When would you be using one and it's controlled from the chassis?
I don't know. Because on a scissor lift, you cannot move it from the chassis. You can make it go up and down.
Up and down.
And on a boom lift, you cannot move it from the chassis. You can make it go up, down, and rotate, and telescope, and do everything else, but you can't.
But you're also not going to operate it from there.
No. So I don't know what a type 2 is.
Yeah,
but
weird.
Maybe we should dig deeper into
figure it out.
The standard. So that's the classifications.
Okay. What else you got?
They require some good rescue planning in place, which is smart. And I actually think it's pretty easy if someone popped out of a boom lift or a scissor lift and they were tied off and they were just hanging there, you would just switch it to ground controls and you'd lower them down.
Bring them down.
Yeah, I think
shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. They have some new qualifications and training regs. So we have always gone to the nth level on training for booms and scissors.
For sure.
We've done it to the qualifications of the forklift standards.
Yep.
So these new ones really don't shake us. But they're going to shake a lot of probably companies that have been doing their own training and haven't been doing thorough classroom training with site-specific, vehicle-specific, hands-on evaluations. If they're not doing it's super good because there's operator rules now, occupant rules now, familiarization rules now.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they bumped up their training.
Yeah,
So,
training used to be like a paragraph that just basically said, please get training.
Yeah. I mean, we've argued with contractors because a site would say, you got to be certified to run that on our site, and they would ask us to enforce the rules. We'd go up to a contractor like, hey, bud, we got to see your card.
Yep.
They're like, we're not required of certification. I'm like, yeah, OSHA doesn't, but this job site does. So,
And then they wrote it as a rule, so now guess what OSHA does?
yeah. So that's the new updates. What do you
Right.
got for new tech with MIPS?
So we were talking about that. There's a kind of a new weird, it feels like a niche hole. Like it's an interesting spot. And it's these little, what is the name of that thing? The Joey.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like it's like an elevated work platform.
It's like a cherry picker.
Yeah, but it's more like
It's like a forklift.
like when they describe it in their manual and stuff, it's like a forklift has been crossed with a scissor lift.
A forklift and a scissor lift had a baby,
Yeah.
and they named it Joey.
They named it Joey. And these things are, I mean, they're handy. You drive them, you just stand on a little platform, you have a little tray in front of you so you can go pick up stuff that, it has to be able to be pickable by
It's like
hand.
an order picker.
Yeah. But at the same time, now you're elevating people in a basket and
Right.
driving it. So they were like, well, where does it go? Like, it's not really a scissor lift, but it's not really a boom lift, but people are up in the air. And so when I actually read through the owner's manual, and they incorporated it into the scissor lift standard is where they put it.
And I saw him use the word aerial lift in that manual too, which made it even more confusing.
Right, because they were using the word.
And the
yeah.
base model didn't come with an anchor point.
No. And so that was kind of that's part of the new tech. And then what they did is they actually added an attachable anchor point for places that require fall protection when you're
Which
using
they should have just
any elevated
put
work
them on
platform.
all of them because
I
almost
agree.
everybody requires that.
Right.
Even in scissor lifts.
It doesn't seem like it'd be that much, in my opinion, to just already have the anchor point for the frame. Like, just part of when you're stamping out and making your frame, you have the anchor point just put on there.
One of the first times I ever got straight up yelled at, chewed out, almost beat up as a safety guy was I was doing a scissor lift operator certification class. And I had a guy in the basket. We're up 20 feet, and we did not have fall protection harnesses on.
Okay.
Because it wasn't required. It's still
Sure.
not.
Yeah.
We had both feet on the ground. We had our gator chain shut, so we had full guardrail system. We were not breaking any
Where
OSHA
were
rules.
you?
I was on site at a customer location.
Okay.
So I was hired to train this one crew. Half the crew got there. I started training them, doing the hands-on stuff.
Sure.
The other half came, and the foreman was in that truck. He gets out of the truck, sees me up in the air with his guys, and we're not tied off.
Starts losing his beans.
Flipping out
That's
on me.
it.
Flipping out. Cussing. Flipping out. Rah,
man.
rah, rah, rah.
Jeez.
And,
did he run over and grab the emergency release and start bringing you guys down, or what?
And so he pissed me off. And we got into a little nice argument match. And, I basically said, you only know site rules. You don't know OSHA rules. Maybe if you show up to some OSHA training, you know some OSHA rules.
Yeah. There you go.
I was mad because he
Well,
was
yeah.
yelling at me.
In
You
front
don't
of
know
the
what
class.
you're doing. You call yourself a safety guy. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm not breaking any OSHA rule here, pal. You don't even know the OSHA rule.
My goodness.
But to his defense,
That's what
every
he did.
site he ever was on, his whole construction career, made you tie off in a scissor lift.
Yeah.
So in his mind, that's the OSHA rule.
And he saw
Now
it
he
over and
sees
over
a
and over
safety
again.
guy in a safety class with his guys with no harnesses on, and he just loses cool.
Yeah. I mean, you
So-
only know what you know.
Yeah, so you were talking about the Joeys, and yeah, I think they should come with anchor points, but it's cool that they have that as an attachment.
I think they're neat too, as far as like new tech goes. A lot of places I've been working with actually have a scissor lift style, and it's kind of like the Joey, but it's only big enough for one person. But it's got all these neat like hooks or attachment points already built onto it to help you haul material up into the air and then assist you in placing it and moving it. And like the new tech for moving stuff at elevation is really cool.
That is cool. I really like scissor lifts. I try to urge all my clients to do that instead of scaffolding.
Oh my gosh, watching people build scaffolding is
And they do make
stressful.
construction grade scissor lifts. They
Oh, yeah.
have them with really gritty, muddy, all-terrain tires. They got them that are 4-wheel drive. They got them that are propane powered.
Mm-hmm.
They got really big, beefy ones, not just a standard, I don't know, I forget the width of the average one, but it'll fit through a door.
Yeah, they will.
It's like 30 inches, I think. 30
They're
by
not
19.
big.
30 inches by 19 feet, I think, is your standard scissor lift. But they make dance platforms. They're huge. I've seen. We had this client. They had one. It was as big as this. Our whole podcast
after work
from here to
you,
there.
Me, dance floor and a scissor lift.
Dance
it's go
floor.
time.
And there was no anchor points, and you could fit like 20 guys on there. It was crazy.
Like
it was a
20
huge
guys.
scissor lift.
Well, yeah.
I actually got to buy it for him at an auction.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was cool. They gave me the checkbook. Like,
But-
if there's anything there you see,
Just
get
go
it.
get it.
And I saw that huge scissor lift, and I'm like, how about a super huge scissor lift? They're like, done.
Done.
Yeah.
Sold.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Didn't even have to argue for that one.
So I always encourage them to use scissor lifts to scaffold because they're easy to use. You know, they're really safe, and they're just you don't have to build them. You don't have to tear them down.
Oh, yeah.
You got to transport them, obviously, around.
Inspect them.
Yeah,
do the regular maintenance in your owner's manual.
Let's talk about that. So OSHA requires you to keep your like maintenance records.
Oh, yeah.
For like 3 to 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. So then everything listed in your owner's manual that says everything that must be done at a certain amount of use hours or after any certain incident or, whenever. It'll just have stuff that rolls over. It says once you've owned it for this X period of time or if this thing has happened, you have to service or replace or get this done to it. And then you got to keep a record that you did it.
Yeah, and if you don't have that record, they can get you. Even if you did it, but you don't have record of it.
Yep.
All right, let's play Stump AJ again.
I don't like this game.
Brought to you in part by Protein Powder.
I'm going to just start eating just raw protein powder.
We have this kid who comes to boxing class,
Yeah.
and he has a pre-workout, and it's in a little tub, and you're supposed to put it in the water.
He just scoops it.
He just scoops in his mouth.
Yeah, a lot of guys do that with pre.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing.
Yep, that's pretty normal.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was normal, but I guess it is normal.
So pre-workout addiction is like a really big thing. And so
Yeah,
many
but just to
people
dump
can't even...
a little cup into your mouth of powder.
So that's the first step into the...
Then they start snorting it and mainlining it, or what?
Well, no, like, so when you put it in a drink and drink it, like, you won't get that effect as quickly.
Because it takes time to get all 16 ounces of water into you.
So then they would go to the scoop, and then pretty soon now, this is going to be 2 scoops for this kid. Like, it's just going to get worse and worse.
That's intense.
That's why, I mean, Aaron, what's my favorite pre-workout?
An apple.
It's an apple. You eat an apple before you work out. It's
know,
probably one of the best
you don't need
pre-workouts.
Stay off drugs, kids.
No drug. Well, it's actually that 600 dose of caffeine.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally off track
and
now.
all the. It's all right. So we were talking about Stump AJ.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
Stump AJ. All right.
Wonderfully
brought to you in
sidestepped it.
part by apples. So here's the question.
Delicious.
Fall protections on a scissor lift and on a boom lift. Which one does OSHA mandate you tie off to?
Okay. So you have to tie off to a boom lift when you're in a boom lift. And in a scissor lift, if you need to tie off, you can tie off either to the scissor lift or to an adjacent anchor point.
Very good. And if it's a Gen 3 and has the anchor point.
Well, yeah, if it has it.
Because not all scissor lifts have anchor points.
Not all of them do.
All right. Gen 2 scissor lifts. What was the fall protection method in the second generation scissor lifts?
Ugh. Is that the one that has the weird, goofy, it's a positioning point in the middle of the basket?
Yeah, a restraint device.
Yeah, where you had to clip
a
into
D-ring
it,
on the floor.
and then you had to have the short lanyard for it.
Yeah. Not an anchor point. But you see guys today with the Gen 2 scissor lift got their fall arrest lanyard hooked into that.
Right.
Which will allow them to lean over and fall out, and they'll just pop that out of the floor.
They could, yeah. They could just bust it right out.
All right. In a boom lift, am I allowed to tie off to an adjacent structure?
While you're in a boom lift?
Yes.
No.
Okay, very good.
You cannot.
If I'm in a boom lift and I go up to the side of a building and I want to get out of the boom lift onto the roof, I'm using the boom lift to access roofs. How do I do that legally without breaking fall protection rules?
You need 2 lanyards.
2 lanyards or
lanyards.
Or a single lanyard with
2 hooks?
2 legs, double leg lanyard. Okay.
Oh, well, I mean, okay.
All
so,
right. So that's
but
part
yeah,
of the tools
you got to
need.
have 2 hooks.
Okay. And does that magically make it legal because I got 2 hooks? How do I
No.
do this? How do I transfer legally?
So the key is, at no point can your feet be in the basket with a hook outside the basket. So if we had to walk it through baby steps,
I don't know if I would say it like that.
That's the thing that in my opinion makes people realize that they haven't done it wrong. So basically, in order to get that high, you're tied off to the basket. You reach your elevation you need to get to, so you're still tied off to the basket. You're gonna whatever you've got once you reach a safe place to actually exit the boom lift, but you're gonna need to step out of the boom lift onto that rooftop or whatever, and then tie off while you're still anchored to the basket. You will now be anchored off to a second point outside the boom lift that is also an anchor point, and then without stepping back inside the basket, you have to reach in and unclip that first anchor point, because the wording in the OSHA standard is very specific.
Okay.
When your feet are in the basket, you are operating a boom lift, and at no point when you are in the basket can a hook be outside the basket.
Okay. I would like you to show me that, because I haven't seen that one. You have to do it now. But, yeah, basically you need 100% tie-off. So if you have a single leg lanyard and you unhook from the boom lift to hook onto your secondary anchor point on the roof, you're illegal at that moment. So it can be done legally. You just got to make sure you're never untied at any moment. All right, cool. I think that's all the stump AJ questions I have, but that gets a lot of people because there's different fall protection rules between the two devices.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very confusing. Oh, I got a curveball for you. So OSHA doesn't say you have to tie off in scissor lifts.
Right.
But they say you have to in boom lifts.
Yes.
But some scissor lift manufacturers require you to be tied off while operating their lift.
Okay.
That is true.
What's the question?
That isn't a question. That's just the curveball.
That's
just to confuse everybody. Because I was working a site one time where they did not want contractors tying off to lifts, scissor lifts.
They did not?
They did not.
Oh, okay.
Because they knew that some scissor lifts had no tie-off points, the Gen 1s, and they didn't want people looping around the guardrail.
Well, I mean, that's fair.
They knew some scissor lifts, the Gen 2s, only had restraint points, and they didn't want people hooking their fall arrest lanyards.
Thinking that now they can monkey around on it.
So they didn't trust the worker to know how to safely top to a lift. So they said, you know what? OSHA doesn't require it. We're not going to do it.
Okay.
If you do need to tie off in a lift, say you got to climb on the rails or lean over, we want you tying off to an outside anchor point. Okay. That was their site rule. And then us as safety, we're in charge of enforcing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a problem with that because a lot of the guys are used to tying off to a lift, and now when they are tied off right to a Gen 3 lift to a legit anchor point, I got to go up to a guy and go, excuse me, safety here. Hate to bother you, sir, but do you mind untying from your lift?
Would you please untie?
And you know, that's like a cop pulling you over and saying, sir, you weren't going fast enough.
Well,
can you please go like 10, 15 miles over the limit?
Hey, that's actually a thing, though, that can happen.
And it was crazy, and they all looked at me and yelled at me, and, are you sure you're safety? You're telling me to untie? I've never had a safety guy tell me to untie. I'm like, sorry, it's site rule. If you do need to tie off, if you're leaning over the basket or if you got to take a foot off platform, you do need to tie off above you to, something that could support 5,000 pounds. And so it was a crazy deal, but I didn't like this, so I was trying to find a loophole. How do I get out of this? How do we change this site rule? So I started pulling manuals of all the lifts from all the contractors, and I found one that said you have to tie off on this lift.
On this lift. So then basically in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because OSHA says you have to go to whatever in writing, whoever has the most strict rule above OSHA.
And you got to follow the manufacturer.
Yeah.
You can't break manufacturer rules.
Well, yeah, if anyone had the most strict
rule. So it didn't work, though. They just said, fine, that one guy who runs that one lift can tie off to his lift.
So he's the only one over there that's like moderately safe.
Yeah. All right. So
we did have a fun one I want to throw back at you.
Okay.
When we did scaffolds, you and I talked about, can you stand on the guardrails in a scaffold? You remember that?
No, but I was thinking of X braces. Can't stand on those cross braces.
So in a scaffold, the scaffolding rules have these two places that OSHA says they can bust you on if you stand on the guardrail.
Okay.
The first one is that whatever you stand on in a scaffold, and they even said this in a letter of interpretation in 2002.
Okay.
Said if you ever stand on a guardrail, it has to be designed and capable of supporting 4 times the maximum intended load. That's
the general scaffold rule. All scaffold components that you stand on got to support over 4 times the intended load. So that makes sense to me.
Prove that guardrail could support, if you're a 200-pound guy, that guardrail's got to say that it was structurally tested at 800 pounds, can support 200 pounds.
Right.
So then you'd be good. But
if you were tied off.
They're probably not going to say that.
Right.
Well, yeah, if you were tied off. The second one that made me question it. I had to go back and read it again. Was you can't stand on anything that's a scaffold that's not 18 inches wide.
Yeah, unless you're tied off.
Well, no, that's just anything. It says if you're on
We
a scaffold,
debated about this last time.
so
because,
I found it
okay.
empirically.
Okay.
It's in writing from OSHA.
Okay.
They actually had an extra sentence that says, unless the employer can prove that it can't get any wider. So like in a situation where you're building a scaffold maybe around something tight or you've got a lot of plumbing and you can only get one plank down. So
you can't get 18 inches.
Right? So you're like, all right, I can prove this is the only plank I can put down. So they wrote in this letter on a scissor lift, because the platform's already so big, you have the room to extend it to 18 inches, so you can never stand on the guardrail.
That would make sense if it's staying under the scaffolding rules.
Yeah.
If OSHA adopts this ANSI rule
and they move it
and they get MEPs, hopefully there'll be legit applicable regs to these things.
But until then, technically, OSHA has said we can never stand on scaffold guardrails.
Which would be scissor lifts in our case.
Yeah, scissor lifts in our case.
Yeah.
We already know that for boom lifts. They wrote it right in there in plain English. They said, cannot climb on the guardrails. But in scissor lifts, we've always kind of like, as an industry, been like, well, if he's tied off, he can kind of monkey around on the guardrails. Now, they fired back, and they said, nope, and we'll bust you twice.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good info to have. That's unfortunate, though, because,
it gets into
it's just
some weird
something
places.
Sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah. We've been in some spots where like the scissor lift goes up and
it's concrete T-legs, but you got to get higher up in there.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, that is all the time we have for our show today on aerolifts, or now known as MEPs. We hope you enjoyed it, got something out of it. We are the Evil Safety Dudes. Until next time, everybody, stay safe out there.
Goodbye.